Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Vivify Tech Talk. My name is Danilo and I am a UX designer here at Vivify Ideas. What I would like to talk about with you today is basically a collection of techniques that are used in UX design. This is going to be the part 1 of 4-part series where we will cover the concept of double diamond. Double diamond is the process which has 4 different parts: discover, define, develop, and deliver. The discover and develop parts are basically the diverging parts, and define and deliver are converging parts. What does that mean? Basically, in discovery phase, what we're doing is we're trying to gather as much information as possible about the product, about the competition, about the users that are using this product. If we have already existing product, that's where we do the analysis of it, the way the people are using it. And if you're building a new product, we can assess the competition, we can assess similar applications in different niches and markets and see how do these apps work and how can we improve upon some of already established design patterns and standards. I'm going to introduce you the 2 techniques that you can use in almost any of your projects and, what is more important, in almost any of the steps in your project. The first technique that I'm going to explain is called micro-usability test. This is a simple test for which you need 2 people, yourself and someone who is going to do the test. The test is comprised of 1 to 3 tasks and it should not be longer than 20 minutes. The idea behind it is that you give your user something to test and give them a concrete tasks to perform on your interface. That could be, as I said, your own application, some UI that you're testing, or some competitor's application that you're trying to see how people are using that. Although you're testing the product itself, you need to observe how the users use the product. That's the main focus of this test. You need to encourage the users to think out loud, to talk about the interface, to talk about the layout, to talk about the stuff that they notice. There are a couple of guidelines that you need to have in mind when you're writing and performing these tests. Although you're testing with users, they need to know that they are not ones who are being tested. What this means is if you do not tell them that, they're going to get frustrated if they do something wrong. The most important thing is to say to them, we're not testing you, we're testing the product. It's nothing wrong with you, take as much time as you need, but at the end, there is no bad things if you not perform. That only means that the interface that you're testing is wrong. Number 2, always encourage them to think out loud. Why? Because they're always going to talk about stuff that you might not see on their faces. For example, they might feel frustrated, but through their talk, you can learn that they're actually kind of enticed by this thing that they're trying to solve. And that way you can better assess the overall emotion that they are feeling. Also, they can point you to the things in interface that you might not think of as important as they might be to them. That's why you maybe need to spend some more time developing that interface as well. After the users have done the test, you can ask them a couple of non-suggestive and open questions so they can elaborate more on their feelings and thoughts during this process. It's important not to suggest the answers to them because that can skew the research that you're doing. I encourage you to tape these tests because you can always go back and see something else that you might have missed the last time. Also, you might not have that much time to take notes while the users are doing the tests. And that's why you basically tape the interviews so you can go back and kind of comb over everything that you've done with them. And just for the sake of privacy measures, kind of just obtain their yes when there comes to the taping of these interviews. A micro-usability test is a tool that provides qualitative research results. What this means is that you're going to end up with a bunch of sentences, a bunch of notes, a bunch of observations, a bunch of statements. To assess and kind of get out something useful from those statements, notes, and sentences, we're going to use a technique called card sorting. That is something that we're going to talk about in the next video. The second technique that I want to talk to you about today is called Heuristic Analysis. This is the technique that you're mostly going to use when you're assessing competition. Of course, you can assess your own product if you're trying to see kind of where do you need to improve or stuff like that. The technique is very simple. You're going to set a few criteria and you're going to rank all the products based on those criteria. You can assess a bunch of different things. It's all about what do you actually need to learn. For example, you can always assess the visual design, you can assess layout, you can assess navigation, you can assess task orientation, which is how much is your app inclined to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And for example, let's say that you have 5 different products and you have 8 different criteria. Every product that you test is going to achieve a number from 1 to 10. You're going to go through those products, you're going to pay attention to the criteria that you set, and at the end of that walkthrough, you're going to give it a number. Out of those numbers, you can see some trends happening. For example, across all of the competition, the visual design is terrible, which means that this is something that you need to pay attention to when you're doing your visual design. Or let's say 2 of those apps have really strong task orientation and navigation. What that means is that from the UX standpoint, those 2 apps are going to be your number 1 competition or your number 1 place to start looking for best practices. The best way to present these results is a spider graph. You've probably seen the spider graphs in football games or something. Me personally, I love to layer the results one on top of the other, and then I can see if some criteria is really good in this set of apps or some other is really bad. From this you can get good action points to see where do you need to improve your app or where do you need to put your focus when you're designing your app. The best place to start using this technique is starting to assess your competition. This technique is also very good for something called exploratory usability testing. Let's say you're trying to push a new product to a market. It has never been copied so far in this niche, but you know that you have similar functionalities in some other markets. What you can do is you can test the applications which have shown to be good in other markets, and then basically also have some set of guidelines that you can use when you're creating your own app. Here's a couple of guidelines for this technique. Although you're working with numbers here, and this is considered a quantitative research, a lot of these things can be subjective, so if you're kind of person who likes to give higher grades to something, please take a step back and see if you're maybe being biased towards some of the applications. Second one, I would strongly suggest that you keep these 4 as your main criteria. That's layout, visual design, task orientation, and navigation. Keep those 4 in every of your heuristic analysis because these 4 are usually the main source of problems. Okay, third one. Although you have the numbers, you have the graphs, try to see between the lines and see the trends in those apps and trends in these results. That way you can maybe see something that is not that obvious. Also, when presenting these numbers, try to elaborate as much as you can. You can assess by criteria, you can assess by app, and I would suggest that you go and assess by criteria. That way you can write concrete action points for your next app that you've been doing. Okay, that would be the 2 main techniques that we use in this phase of the double diamond process. And these are inexpensive, fast techniques which kind of yield the best results overall. Most of the time you can assess any problems that you have in your app or the competition has overall, and that could give you really strong points into where do you want to go next with your app. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you learned something useful and applicable to your next project. Cheers!